I mean, the bike's fine. Hello and welcome to the second segment of Dateline New Haven. I'm Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. Our guest today, Steve Orosco, is a headline that he's bringing to us. You hear it here first. Steve Orosco, who is a mixed martial arts impresario, and he lives on the East Shore. He's run for state senate and for alder. And Steve, welcome back to Dateline New Haven. You're always a welcome guest here.
Yes, thank you for having me. I always love being on this.
I'm going to ask you to be a little
You're
closer.
You're my guy, Paul. You're my guy. You always have me.
All right, so Steve Orosco, what are you up to these days? You up to anything interesting? Or?
Say that again?
You up to anything interesting these days?
Honestly, no. Just still running my gym, doing some business consultants.
Well, how about today? You going to do anything interesting today?
I'm thinking about it. Yes, I am going to go file and run for mayor and take
of New Haven
to take on Justin Elliker.
So you're going to run for mayor?
I am running for mayor.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
it's not like sitting home and watching old reruns on Netflix.
I know. I thought long and hard about it over the last few months. And the amount of people who are supporting me kind of made it a very easy decision. And I learned a lot in these last two campaigns going up against Martin Looney. The first time around, I really thought I could beat him just because of the statistics and where this city stood. And the fact that I'm a firm believer in term limits, and most people are. But man, when I ran against him, and I realized how difficult it is to beat someone who's been in office since 1980. So then the second time came around, and I said, man, if I want to run for bigger office at some point, I have to keep my feet in the fire. So let me just keep on going, keep on chipping away. And the last one was more about me showing the GOP and showing that I could get the CEP grant twice in a row because no one's ever done it.
Okay, let's get to those details in a few minutes. You're talking about citizen election programming, meaning of qualifying for public financing. GOP is the Republican Party. Let's start out real basic. You're running for mayor.
Yes, sir.
As a Republican.
As a Republican.
Okay, is the Republican Party supporting you?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so you're going to run for mayor. You're going to file papers today. Are you filing an official candidacy papers?
Official papers today.
To run for mayor.
Yep.
All right.
So I'm starting with you. And then,
so why are you running for mayor, Steve Orosco?
Listen, I ran twice, right? So you figure 2022.
For state senate.
Yep. 2020.
And you also ran for alder.
And I ran for alder. And I've noticed that nothing has changed in the city. It's just the same thing over and over. Crime hasn't gotten better. Education has gotten worse. Economic vitality hasn't gotten better. And people are very frustrated. So I said, you know something? Let's run again because something has to change at some point. And if you don't run, nothing's ever going to change. And the Republican Party, they just started running candidates here in 2021. Really the first time in the 21st century. So we have an uphill battle. And the fact that I think in 2021, Elk had 85% of the vote. 2023, he had 80%.
You're talking about incumbent Democratic Mayor Justin Elliker. Yeah.
And in Carlson, it was 14%. Then it jumped up to 18%. So if every cycle we keep chipping away, eventually I think.
Well, that's why we have political parties to run candidates for office and
exactly
and over time and offer an alternative. So what's the theme of your campaign? Is there a slogan? Is there a guiding principle to why you want people to vote for Steve Orosco? What's he going to do?
I'm still under the guise of be the change.
Mm-hmm.
I am a firm believer that totalitarianism does not work. It doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. I feel almost every place that I see that's run by one party for too long, seems to fail because there's no checks and balances, there's no accountability.
And in New Haven, which is a very Democratic city, we last elected a Republican mayor in 1951. Exactly. And we have no Republicans in any contested office for municipal elected office or state elected office coming from New Haven.
Which I find very interesting because most people, you and I think we're very centered. Maybe you're left-leaning, maybe you're right-leaning, but we believe in bipartisanship. So if I'm in a heavy Democratic place, why wouldn't you want a Republican in there?
Well, you know what's interesting to me about that, Steve?
Yeah.
Is that in New York City, which is at least as Democratic a city or more than New Haven, they voted for Michael Bloomberg 3 times, Republican and Independent. They voted for Rudy Giuliani a couple times as a Republican. This isn't like ancient history.
Yep.
And it's kind of interesting. AOC they put in Congress, and they do have Eric Adams now who is centrist. Why is it that New Haven's different? Why, since 1953, have we had only Democrats running the show, and since about 17 years ago, only all Democrats on the board of alders and all that?
Yeah, well, like you just said, I'll get to that. The whole board of alders, all 30 wards are Democrat, all 7 state reps are Democrat, both state senators, mayor, congressional, the board of ed, everyone's Democrat. And New Haven is different because we have so many old Democrats here that are holding on to being Democrats. The Italian community, for example, as well as progressives. New Haven is definitely the liberal hub of the entire state. We have Yale here. We're the biotech hub, and because of that, it's a kind of a meshing of old Democrats and new Democrats. A lot of old Democrats aren't willing to just vote.
So how does a Republican like you convince people to, like, as you pointed out, the last time a Republican ran for mayor, he got 18%, and that was a lot for a Republican. 16%. How do you make a case to people like you're saying in biotech, young progressives, older, lifelong Democrats? How do you appeal to them to vote for Republican this year?
I think that's actually a bad way of campaigning. I don't think in New Haven you're ever going to go to Westville or East Rock or change minds. This is not going to happen. They'll shut the door on you automatically. You have to go after the people who don't vote generally and create a movement. So in 2023, this is the craziest statistic of all of them. In 2023, 12,000 people voted in the mayoral election. In a city of 135,000 people with 60,000 registered voters. It's kind of like sad, to be honest with you.
That often has to do with how competitive it is. We do get higher numbers, especially in primaries. But I see your point.
Absolutely.
Because there's not an alternative. Now, you were talking about one-party government. You're talking about crime. You're talking about schools. You're talking about economic development. What is your take on what one-party government does? Why is it, in your view, a problem to have one-party government?
There's no checks and balances. It's the most important thing. Because this happens on both sides of the fence. I want people to understand that when one party rules for too long, no one holds themselves accountable. They don't call each other out. It's almost, with listen, I'm very back the blue, but there's that thin blue line people speak about. It's no different in politics. If let's say, a state rep disagrees with the mayor, he doesn't call out the mayor because he doesn't want to lose his position trying to go up the pecking order. So as the city keeps falling apart, people still keep on voting Democrat. And these politicians don't hold themselves accountable. I think that's a problem. And I tell people all the time, I'm still waiting for a politician to get on stage and say, you know something, guys? We thought it was the right decision, but in hindsight, it was actually the wrong decision. But we're going to do A, B, and C to rectify it. Nobody does that. They just double down on the failures. And the people will still keep on voting for them. And they know that because we're such a Democratic city, we're outnumbered 12-1 Democrat, Republican.
They have big guns, independents who are up for grabs. Daniel Hunt writes in, Stevie O is a great guy. Thanks for listening, Daniel, and thanks for hanging out. We're talking to Steve Orosco, who today is, after this show, I believe, is about to file papers to run for mayor as a Republican in New Haven. Let me ask you a few mechanics questions. Are there other Republicans running for the nomination, or have party leaders blessed your campaign?
Party leaders have blessed my campaign. There's a chance there's a primary. I've had this argument with people about primaries. Especially in the Republican Party, that I think primaries are actually good for the party because it creates excitement. It creates awareness of the party. I think when someone just slides in sometimes, then all the Republicans don't even know that someone's running. And I think it's very healthy to have it. So I'm the kind of person that welcomes competition. Whereas I've talked to other Republicans and they say, oh, we shouldn't be fighting against each other. And I'm saying, you're not fighting against each other. We're fighting a losing battle as a Republican in a place like New Haven, We should be creating healthy competition. So then let's say I run and 3 other people also run. That means all of the network of those 3 people will support whoever wins, and it gives you a better chance of winning an election. And we don't do that here. And I think that's a problem.
So you like competition in politics and in martial arts. Let's talk about you personally. You live in Morris Cove. You're on the Smash HQ gym in Milford. You are on the California-based MMA Smash Global League.
Yes.
And is there any parallel between the approach you take to mixed martial arts to the approach you take to politics?
Absolutely. You know, the most exciting part about running in New Haven is it's David versus Goliath. It makes it fun. It makes it exciting. Can you imagine if someone turned one of these major cities red, whether it's New Haven or Baltimore or Chicago? Because you may disagree, but I'm a firm believer in we don't have blue states, we have blue cities. And in a place like Connecticut, it's so blue in, say, Bridgeport, New Haven, and Hartford.
Trump won a lot of towns.
Yeah, he did. So, but if you don't start turning the votes in these cities, you'll never make up the vote in the surrounding towns because the populace is just too massive. So
let's talk. By the way, Steve's a big public media guy. Are you going to go for public financing? You talk to CP, Citizen Selection Program, when you're in for the state. Are you going to seek to run in the Democracy Fund to get public financing?
In all honesty, I've gone back and forth with this as well, the pros and cons. As of right now, I'm going to say no. I think it's easier to raise money privately in the city of New Haven because I'm not limited to where I can go get my money from. I can go outside of the state. The limits are much higher. I believe it's $1,000 per person, $250 per business. But if I go Democracy Fund like CEP grant, there's a maximum. That's 300, or I think it's 300 for Democracy funds. It was 320 for CEP. So I'm probably go private because I think I can raise a lot more privately.
And then what about how big a deal is social media? Now, you're a big social media guy. You got these very effective, I watch them all the time. You're on my regular Instagram feed. Matter of fact, I learned about Rosa DeLauro, who you don't like, the congresswoman. I find out what she's up to mostly because of your feed on your Instagram page. You have a lot of followers. I notice you have 3,600 followers on your Fight for Connecticut and another 57,000 in Steve Orosco. What role is social media? I know you have Marcus here doing a video today. Are you going to be doing more door knocking or more reels?
I'm going to be doing both this time. So my focus on this campaign for sure when it comes to door knocking and being in the public eye is going to be in the inner city. You know, like you said, we had a lot of shift voting for Trump. Now, the biggest shift was the black male vote. That we know. So that's where my target is going to be. And that's also where the least amount of people vote in the first place. Because like this last election.
So you're going to try to appeal to black male voters the way Trump did?
100%.
Do you support Trump?
Do I support Trump? Absolutely. I support disruption. I think disruption is extremely important, whether you like Trump or not. And the craziest part is no one's even giving him a chance. Like liberals are already saying, oh, he's going to do A, B, and C. He's been in office for 60 days. And the fact that you want to go against your president means you want your country to fail. So
what does that mean about how you feel about Elicker? Justin Elicker, the mayor, has signed on to 2 lawsuits against the Trump administration. Yeah. One of them is $30 million that we'd had approved by Congress for clean energy, like geothermal pumps, including a big housing development by the train station. That's been put on hold by the Trump administration. And secondly, they were fighting a sanctuary order that because we have a policy that police aren't supposed to bring ICE into prisons and share information about arrestees, they're going to hold back our money for police. Was Elicker right to sue? Would you continue the suit, and why?
No, I wouldn't continue to sue. I think it should be played out. I actually like the fact that Elicker is suing Trump because what he's doing is putting more eyes on New Haven and our failures. I mean, we're at a budget deficit every single year. What do we have, like $2.5 billion in unfunded liabilities? Our schools are falling apart. We're at a deficit again this year. You know, we spend money on things like looking at the budget deficit.
So you're glad he sued because you want attention paid, but do you agree with him that they should free that $30 million for geothermal? Do you agree with him that we shouldn't have police money tied up from the Department of Justice because of our policy on immigration?
I am not for being a sanctuary city in the first place. It's funny because I was listening to your conversation in the last one, which was amazing. Because you listen to it, man, I feel so bad for some of these people. And it's okay to have compassion. But at the end of the day, you also have to realize where the resources are being taken away from. So when you have, say, illegals or migrants coming into your city, where are they going? They're not going to East Rock. They're not going to Westville. They're going to the inner city, and they're taking funds directly away from the community.
Actually, I know a number of refugees in Westville.
Yeah, but most of them are going in the inner city, and that's what's making classroom sizes bigger. Our classroom sizes are 29-1 is the ratio. How do you expect a kid to learn?
And how about on the green energy stuff? Do you not agree with, because there's a whole debate about geothermal, like we're trying to have less carbon in how we produce energy. We want to have geothermal pumps, bike lanes, that kind of stuff. How do you feel about that?
I'm 50-50. I got to be divided on it because I'm all for clean energy 100%, but I just see how much money has to go into making that happen. What was it? It was $25 million that they spent on the 15 electric buses and all the new bus stops, but it's $100 to $150 million project. Where's all that money coming from when we're already at a deficit? And those kind of things worry me because all that does is put a strain on our local economy. And at the end of the day, too many people are more worried about national politics than our own home. And I have an issue with that. When people ask me about Trump and ask me about anything outside of New Haven, I say, listen, we need to focus on our city and how to make our city better. Who cares what's going on nationally?
Well, let's talk a little more about Steve Orosco running for mayor as a Republican. We're going to have competition in New Haven this year, which of course is a great thing when we have more than one person running for an office and we get to hear the different views. That's a public service. Steve, we just passed this, we're in the process of considering $703 million budget, proposed city budget for mayor for the fiscal year that starts July 1st. Would you vote yes? And what would you do different in the budget?
I got to go line item, because like I said, we spend money on things like $2.5 million in a Kelp Innovation Center, and I think it was like $4 million on a study of New Haven to Providence capacity. And I'm like, why are we spending money on some of these things when our city's falling apart? You can't tell me those things are more important than our education, than our crime.
And what would you do different in education from what they're doing? Like, for instance, there was a recent change in reading. Remember doing whole language where you kind of guess what a word looks like, and that was shown not to work. And our reading scores have gone up. It's short term.
Yeah, but our reading scores are still what?
Below. It's still in the
13%,
basement.
no, 16% reading.
So are they doing the
math?
right thing by changing to phonics back again and having these tutors? You know, the mayor has mobilized a citywide group of tutors. Is that the right approach, or what would you do differently with schools?
I mean, citywide tutors help. But again, the biggest issue is, number one, teacher shortage.
That is a big deal. So how would you address that? They're trying to do more recruiting, helping paras get the degrees to become teachers. They're trying to
first of all,
pay up the salaries to compete with the suburbs.
Listen, if you're a teacher, you can't tell me you would be okay with working in New Haven. Imagine having 29 students in your classroom. How do you get anything done? Now, number one, you've got to grade 29 homework assignments, 29 quizzes and tests.
So would you tax people more to have more teachers and more classrooms if they're smaller?
I would want to fix the budget so teachers were paid more and classroom sizes were smaller. Like, I'll give you a great example. My son went to Nathan Hale up until third grade. Third grade, he wasn't even getting homework anymore. He wasn't being challenged. He was getting A's for doing nothing. That doesn't make him reach his full potential. So we pulled him out of school. We sent him to East Shore Catholic Academy.
Where is that?
It's in Brantford.
How is that?
It's amazing. I mean, he has homework every night. I mean, he's got nothing but straight A's. He's really being pushed hard. That's what we need for our kids, and they're not doing that here in New Haven. So,
what do you think about curbside composting? That's a big thing. We're going over state money now. That, you know, in addition to putting out your recycles and putting out your regular trash, we then be putting out our food scraps. I won't, because I have a pile in my backyard.
I know. I've seen your videos of you composting.
What do you think about a city getting the state money for city composting program?
Again, that's a priority thing. If we're requesting money for composting, then we should be requesting more money for funding for education.
Well, we are. We did. You think one negates the other? You think they only get so much?
I absolutely do.
So you got to have the priorities. You're saying.
I think priorities. You can only fund so many things, and everyone runs out of money. For example, what did they make a mechanics program, right? They had a $3 million mechanics program. Amazing, because the trades are really good for people. You know, it's a great opportunity that if you're not going to go to college. But what happens when that money runs out? Then what do? You have to keep on funding it. So then you take away from something else. Someone else gets sacrificed to fund this mechanics program. So I feel like in New Haven, we're constantly putting Band-Aids on things without trying to fix the foundation, usually that's because it takes too long to fix stuff.
Steve Orosco, running for mayor as a Republican. Steve, what would you do with public safety and crime now? Do you think that the current chief is doing a good job? He's been, kind of really out there in the community. He works a lot.
I actually do think the chief's doing a great job. I know a lot of New Haven police officers. I've spoken to a lot of them. And again, another shortage, just like with teachers, also underpaid. And not to go on a tangent with education.
They did have the new contract that the union was happy with, correct?
Yeah.
Because they've been underpaid for years. What do you think now? Is the pay right? Or what needs to happen next? You're elected day one. Yeah. What are you going to do in public safety?
We have to recruit and hire more police officers. That's a fact. You have to give them a reason to come here. But why would a police officer come here if...
Well, when we train them, they're stolen by Hamden or other towns, especially quieter towns. They're paid more and for less danger.
But our crime is too high here. We're the most violent city in the entire state.
So one thing I'm hearing is that we lose a lot of talented young cops because they can make more and less dangerous decisions in other cities. And the people we end up getting are the people who are excited about the kind of work you can do here with the community policing department, some of the more in-depth investigations that they do. So it seems, how would you convince
But a lot of those police officers that are excited to come, I always call them like the young guns. They come in here and they're here for a few years and they feel like they're not making a difference.
And they have to work triple shifts when you don't have
triple shifts, but then they leave and they got to go somewhere else.
So how would you keep them and how would you recruit new people? What would you tell them?
There's got to be some kind of pay for performance scale, like anything else in life. Same thing with education.
I wonder how you'd set that up. That's interesting, Steve. How would you set up like a pay for performance for police?
Yeah,
because you don't want to do it number of arrests. Because if you solve a problem without arrest, that's often better, right?
Yes, but you can still. It's not just arresting people. It's also you're arresting people, and then you also can't get off can't just get out of jail 10 times and create another crime. That's what I mean when I say a lot of these police officers feel like their hands are tied. Why am I arresting this person, and why are they getting out the next day, and I'm arresting him again the next week? They're literally have their backs against the wall, and they feel like they can't get their job done. So obviously that moves up the chain to the judicial system as well. It's kind of a
as a mayor, you can advocate on state policy. What about moving the Whaley jail? Are you the pretrial detention facility? Do you think that's a good idea?
I'm not sure about that one.
It's okay. And again, you don't expect to have a business on everything. You got to have plenty of time. And we've plenty
of time to learn a lot of things. I can't stay here and tell.
What about ODs? Like there's talking about safe injection sites. Some cities have tried it. Some don't like it. Some do. Where you say, here's a place that if you're shooting up, it's going to be safer here. You can be off the street, not bothering people. Some people say that promotes more addiction. Other people say that keep people shooting up anyway, keeps them safe.
I personally don't think it works. You see what has happened in Philadelphia. You see what's happened in San Francisco. And a lot of times you are promoting it and you're putting in areas where children can literally walk right by these places. That's a problem. Now, it's one thing if people are going to, let's just say, which would never happen, Yale had their own. And it was in their hospital. And that could be a clean injection site. And they're monitored.
I have a feeling it's not going to happen there.
No, it's not going to happen. But that would be a way to do it where it's maybe cohesive, more smart, more logical. But they're going to put them on, if you're on Whaley Avenue, for example, they're just throwing them in the inner city.
So, Steve, you own Smash Gym. You used to, you're still very buff. You used to compete in MF. Do you still do that?
No, but I still train.
You still train very hard. What have you learned from training and promoting events in MMA that you would bring to this campaign? Is there any philosophical, or starting a business and succeeding? What are you going to bring from that to your campaign for mayor?
Yeah, and I want people to also know that I'm not just a fighter. I have an MBA and I have a master's in science management, so I am also very educated. I know that matters to liberals these days. But again, when you run an event, I have to be honest with you, the amount of budget allocation, like you have to stay within a budget. You can't go over budget or your event folds. Mm-hmm. So I've always had to maintain a certain budget. You have so many working parts. It's damage control every single time where the day of a fighter falls out or lighting gets broken. There's so many things that happen that are unforeseen, and they always happen.
So give me the elevator pitch before we let you go formally file. And I'm sure you're excited about that, Steve. What's the elevator pitch? You're on an elevator. You're only going up to floor 5. You say, hey, Steve Orosco, you run for mayor? Go, yeah, why should I vote for you?
You should vote for me because I want to create change. I want to be the first person to decrease crime, better our education system, and actually create economic vitality for this city. One thing, and I'm kind of going off a tangent again.
It's okay.
One thing that I have an issue with in our city too is Mayor Elkert is more focused on affordable housing, which I understand, but that doesn't matter if we're not creating revenue and business for our city. You know, I was in a meeting last week in Fairhaven area, and I'm meeting with a business owner, and he says they would rather put more affordable housing in this area, this warehouse area, than to actually put business here to create revenue, to create jobs so people can't afford their homes. And I think everything is done backwards in New Haven, and that needs to change. Otherwise, what are they going to do? Keep on selling our property tax exempt to make up for their mismanagement of funds? What happens when we're 70%, 80%, 90%?
So what's next? You going to lunch next, or what are you doing next?
I'm going straight to City Hall, and I'm going to file.
All right, for mayor.
For mayor of New Haven,
Republican
Connecticut. Republican.
Steve Orosco.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you so much. You are always welcome in the studio.
Thank
You are
you.
always welcome in this program. We love talking to you. And thanks to everyone in New Haven who keeps democracy alive by giving us a choice
Yes.
on election day.
Absolutely.
Steve Orosco. Thanks to Harry Drost, working the controls. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How to Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.